With Fear Inoculum's release on October 30th, 2019, Tool announced that they were back and that they were here to make an impact. And well, message received. Tool is currently slated to debut at #1 on the Billboard Top 200 charts for Fear Inoculum, knocking off names such as Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey. This is incredible for so many different reasons. The first being the price tag of the album being more than a traditional CD. The second being the fact that there were so many people that were willing to give Tool another chance after 13 years. You would think some people would maybe forget about the band or just decide that they didn't want to bother with them anymore, but instead they came out in the hundreds of thousands. It's fantastic to see. And it's also amazing considering whenever you take a look at Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey's fans, some of them may not even have been born whenever 10,000 Days came out in 2006. It's amazing that these demographics are still showing up for the power of physical media. But now that we have this fifth album, now that that wait is over, we need to look at Tool's albums, Fear Inoculum included, and see where they rank. Where is Fear Inoculum in this equation? What is the best release? And really the nice part about this is that there's really no wrong answer. This is a great band, and all 5 releases bring something to the table that is equally great. So if you're a new fan looking to scope them out for the first time, either of the studio albums is a perfect place to start. We're not going to do EPs on this, but it's time for us to rank them all. Let's see where they're all supposed to be, 5 through 1. Let's rank them all. Tool. And we start with number 5, which is Undertow. Now, Undertow is Tool's debut record, and this is one that does have a lot of great things going for it. It's their heaviest album. It's one that does show that they have that root in metal. It's one of the reasons why they have maintained that closeness in proximity to heavy metal throughout all of these years. And it's also an album that did introduce so many people to the uniqueness of Maynard's voice and the uniqueness of Tool's sound. However, with that said, this is still an album that does seem to be a band that is trying to get their identity completely on the same perch with they themselves as musicians, and it's just not quite there yet. There's a lot of terrific material that is within this album that does really paint a great picture. However, it is still one that feels a bit rough around the edges. Still a terrific debut album. It definitely outpaces a lot of other debuts from a lot of other bands, and especially considering the future that was to be had for Tool, this is a great place to start. Number 4 is actually Fear Inoculum. Now, putting this on here is going to cause a lot of questions. It's only been about a week, maybe 2 weeks. Is it enough time to digest this album and truly know where it belongs? I've listened to this album enough where I'm solid on this spot, despite the fact it was really difficult to put it here. This is a terrific disc, one that has a lot of different themes going along with it, especially the number 7 and that angel number 777, which I'm not even sure if that's supposed to be a part of it, but it doesn't matter. It's there. It's crazy. And this is a disc that is known for its reappropriation, considering a couple of these songs have the same general build-up, almost as though they were recycling some of the ideas in order to really get the ball rolling. But once you get to Tempest right there at the end, it turns the whole idea on its heels. Well, okay, it had already been turned on its heels thanks to Chocolate Chip Trip and thanks to Calling Voices, but it really turns it on its heels. It's almost like they go back to the days of Undertow, which we just talked about, and somehow improve upon the formula and make it all the more vast and expressive. This is an album that, despite its 27 score, only ranks 4th whenever it comes to Tool albums as a whole. That's how you can tell that this band still has a sterling discography, and Fear Inoculum actually fits in it very, very nicely. Number 3, we have 10,000 Days. This was a huge debate for me. It was almost number 4, but I have a lot of personal, grip whenever it comes to this disc, considering I listened to this album to absolute death in the late 2000s, and still listen to it to this day every so often. This is just such a varied, kind of strange album, one that seems to be a lot more associated with jams or just strange little ideas that were able to come together to create a lot of different feelings, a lot of different sounds, and it is probably one of the most varied albums that Tool has ever output. Whenever you take a look at a track such as Vicarious going into Zombie, and then seeing the Wings from a Recycle, those 2 tracks, and then you get songs such as The Pot and Rosetta Stoned right into, there is just so much variety that is packaged on 10,000 Days that I think it sometimes causes a little bit of a jilt in the imaginations of some fans. That's one that just seems to be going all over the place, up and down, and as a result doesn't feel like a smooth listen. But instead, I really enjoy all the creativity that this album is able to really bring, and as a result, I think that it belongs right here among the pantheon of the two giants that we're about to discuss. Number 2 is Lateralis. Lateralis was the album that I think gave birth to a brand new generation of Tool fans whenever it was released in the first part of the 2000s. This was an album that really captured the imagination not of just the alternative music fan or the metal fan or the whatever fan, but instead also brought in the prog fans, brought in the stoner fans, really just brought in everybody. You can remember songs such as Schism being such big hits on the radio, and Parabola was only able to add on to that. And then you get to the second half of this disc, especially the trilogy of songs that are near its conclusion with songs such as Reflection or Disposition, and we have just a fantastic, fantastic finale for this disc, one that feels very neat and concrete. Plus, the title track itself is just a monster, absolutely amazing from head to toe. This is a disc that you can still pop on to this day and go to random songs on its front end or back and still just feel very attuned to it and still feel like you are feeling every single note that is being plucked, every single word that is being sung, and every single emotion that is bleeding out of the instruments. It's a fantastic trip. I definitely welcome you to go and take it. And that brings us to number 1. I know, it's short for these videos, but it's Anima. In the latter part of the 90s, 1996 to be exact, this beast was announced and released to the world only 3 years after the release of Undertow. Actually, what's kind of funny about all this is that 3 years between Undertow and Anima, 5 years between Anima and Lateralis, 5 years between Lateralis and 10,000 Days, 5 and 5 and 3, that's 13. No wonder it took 13 years for Fear Inoculum to be released. It's the Tool number. It's kind of like the Fibonacci number, only for Tool. But Anima is just a beast of a disc, one that feels very thematic, not to mention almost conceptual whenever you listen to it. Because whenever you go down and through this, it's almost like you don't want to stop because it's sort of not being completionist toward the story itself. Not to mention these songs are extremely varied. Tracks like H or Jimmy or 46 and 2 going into, once again, a just absolutely terrific title track. We're going into Eulogy, which is a fantastic spot right there at the beginning. This whole entire album just feels like it has a lot of density to it, not to mention it's extremely welcoming whenever it comes to its material. What's interesting about Anima, which can sometimes lead you astray on some other Tool albums, is that you can just pick up with any song and you're immediately going to want to continue and complete the album, unless of course you chose the very final song. If you start from the beginning, you're not going to want to end until the album is over and 70 plus minutes of your life is gone. It has that welcoming feel. It feels like you could be right at home within this album's grasp. It's really kind of crazy, and it's one of the most unique experiences that you're going to get from that generation of alternative music. Alternative music and radio music was changing so very much during the latter part of the 1990s, but yet Tool, instead of embracing these changes and heading more toward a nu metal direction, stayed put and actually evolved their sound from Undertow in order to craft something even more artistically pleasing. Something that truly felt like it was the anti-generation or the anti-band of the generation of radio tracks, considering you could hear Korn and Disturbed and these other bands a couple of years later within nu metal, but then you're going to go back and hear stuff from this album, from Anima. You're going to hear some of these tracks and you're just going to think to yourself, wow, this is something else. And that's what this album was. It was the anti-album for that generation. It was the album that we needed but didn't realize that we deserved. And Anima still to this day feels like a calculated piece of small genius that is going to be very difficult for many, if any, bands to try to replicate in the future. And that's our list. If you had a different list for that or a different order, please do place it in the comments below. I'm interested to see your thoughts on this. My name is coverkillernation, and it's been really fun talking about Tool these last couple of weeks. We never really did that in 11 years, so it's nice to get them before the channel does walk away here later on this year. I hope that you will still like the video, subscribe for the epic finale of things that are happening here, and hey, leave a comment because I read those. I'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for checking us out. Take care.